America, land of the free and home of the highest incarceration rates in the world. Over 2.4 million American citizens are currently incarcerated, with a 60% recidivism rate. Why are people who are getting out going right back in? What's happening inside these prisons that's not allowing for rehabilitation? Brian Nelson is a paralegal at the Uptown People's Law Center in Chicago. He also spent 27 years in a supermax prison in Illinois. He was kind enough to share his first-hand experience with me.
Illinois' prison system is so overcrowded. We're worse than any state in the United States on mental health and medical treatment right now.
Wow.
We have women sleeping in the gym floor in Logan Correctional Center. We have men sleeping in basements with flooded water in Vandalia. We have men sleeping in closets in Vienna. We have them sleeping on the floor in the infirmary in Stateville, NRC, which is the Northern Reception Center. Basically, all male inmates from medium security to maximum security are locked in their cell basically 23 hours a day. They come out for chow, they come out for yard, and then they're locked in their cell. But the state of the mental health treatment is, if you have mental health problems, so what? Who cares? There's no rehabilitation. There's almost no education. There's very, very limited out-of-cell activity at all. The cells in the North House, South House, in Menard and Pontiac are so small, but there's two inmates in there, that you are literally rubbing against each other all day long. Menard is on lockdown approximately 3/4 of the year, where it's 24 hours a day you are locked in a cell. The medical treatments, we've had inmates that we've worked with that have had cancer in their head, but it was classified as an earache for months and months and months and months. Another inmate that had shattered jaw that went from one prison to another. He did 30-something days with a shattered jaw. When he went to another prison, they finally said, something's wrong with your jaw. Took him outside and had to put a steel plate in his face because there's no medical treatment. Department of Corrections, well, most of it, mental health and medical staff are a private corporation that are for profit. So they're in it for the money. So the less they spend on an inmate is more profit for them. And how do you cope with another person? I developed problems in TAMS where I paced between 15 and 18 hours a day. And if you're in a cell with me, how do you cope with me? Everything out here is a little bit faster pace, where I still have an abrasive attitude sometimes, because it's the way you survive in there. At one time it was so animalistic. You had to be ready at all times because you never know who's having a bad day. Yes, I did something wrong. I deserve to go to prison. I admit it. I'm not one of them guys, I'm innocent. No, I'm not. I was involved in my crime. I went to jail. I went and did my time. I did not deserve to be treated like that in solitary confinement. There is no rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is over.
It's easy to turn a blind eye to these people who are locked out of sight, but it matters to you too. Fiona Edwards works with the Sustainability in Prisons project in Washington and spoke to me on the subject.
When they come out, they're going to be our neighbors. And you don't want to think of your neighbors like, oh, that's such a bummer, I have to live next to this person. You want to be excited and like, yeah, here comes this vet tech that's has this crazy life story, but is joining society in a good way.
Fiona's right. Not only should Brian's story be an ethical red flag, but logically, these unethical treatments only further inmates' inhumane qualities rather than rehabilitate them into productive members of society. The good news is, there are many private organizations striving to achieve a more just system. The Sustainability in Prisons project is one of those programs that uses environmental science to educate the inmates. Some projects they maintain are recycling, composting, gardening, and breeding the endangered Oregon spotted frog. Studies show that bringing science into prisons lowers recidivism rates. SPP also has much lower violence and sexual assaults rates than the average prison. Here is a testimonial from an inmate who is currently incarcerated and also works with SPP. I could say anything about who I have become, yet I will let the actions I take each day speak for themselves. I have had much healing and restoration that I can only credit to a mind that has been transformed in much the same way as the composting process. I am actively involved in my own recovery. I freely share the precious gems of my mental health and stability that have been given to me. My hope is that when I am released, I will be like the compost and used by society to produce a harvest that will benefit others. Lindsay Hamilton is another technician at SPP and had some first-hand stories to tell.
They really, the technicians that I've been working with are always asking for more stuff to read. Like, bring me blogs about what other parts of SPP are doing, or, do you have, information on, this subject or this subject.
These anecdotes just show that the inmates can and are willing to change. Not only is this treatment more ethical, but between 2005 and 2010, SPP produced a $3.5 million cost avoidance for the Department of Corrections. Programs like SPP are important because they rehabilitate inmates and give them trade skills so they can start fresh and contribute to society upon their release. But wait, there's another piece needed in order to change the system. How is the system supposed to change if the people aren't educated about what's going on? For this, I spoke to Alan Mills, a lawyer at Uptown People's Law Center.
I think the biggest hurdle is the public. We have the prison system ultimately that the people want. And as they will tell you if you go down to Springfield and talk to legislators, nobody has ever lost an election because they were too tough on crime. Whereas people lose elections all the time because they get charged as being too soft on crime. And I don't think people understand what it means when you talk about tough on crime. That seems to be the gut reaction of politicians, is to say, okay, we have a problem, so we will change the criminal law and make it tougher. And the public buys that. And again, I think a lot of that is because the public doesn't understand who's in prison and why they're there. So that's, as I was saying before, why we have really a strong dedication here to public education and organizing as part of our work, because we don't think that ultimately the courts are going to solve this alone. It really takes changing the hearts and minds of the people. I think the courts have an important role to play. I think people have rights when they're in prison, but ultimately we're not going to restructure our prison system until the public begins to wake up as to what's really happening inside and how much it's costing them, both in terms of cash, because again, this is a $1 billion plus system that we have, and in terms of the ultimate effect. It's not really increasing people's safety, because as Brian said, people come back out again. And if they're treated terribly and they come back out, they're just going to commit another crime. So we're not actually protecting people at all. We're not making our streets safer. We're spending a huge amount of money, and we are destroying lives and whole communities by this lockup system.
So what can you do about it? Educate your friends and family. Research a candidate before voting for them. Send a letter to your local mayor, senator, or member of Congress. We need to band together as a country to make sure there is liberty and justice for all.